Hello everyone. In today's video I bring you an absolutely transformative story that will deeply challenge your beliefs. We are about to learn the story of Everly Montgomery, a bodybuilder who went through a shocking near-death experience and returned with revelations about the truth that religions hide. What she discovered on the other side about Earth and the evolution of souls will change the way you see life. So, before we get started, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Now, get ready to embark on this surprising and eye-opening journey. Hello, my name is Everly Montgomery. Yes, I know it's not a very common name, but believe me, my story is even more uncommon than my name. I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, in a family that valued silence more than words and discipline above all else. My father, Hank, was a tough-as-nails military man, the type who believed respect was earned with an iron fist. My older sister, Melissa, was the perfect daughter in his eyes, obedient, disciplined, always following the rules to the letter. Me? Well, I was the black sheep of the family. From an early age, I realized I didn't fit into that rigid mold my father tried to force me into. While Melissa marched to the beat of his drum, I always sought my own melody. This, of course, put me in constant conflict with my father, and by extension, with the entire family dynamic. Growing up in that environment was challenging, to say the least. I always felt inadequate, like I was constantly fighting to prove my worth. No matter what I did, it never seemed to be enough to earn my father's approval or to feel accepted in the world he had created for us. It was within this context that I found my first passion: bodybuilding. It may seem strange, but for me, it was perfect. It was a way to take control of something in my life, to shape my body in the way I wanted, not in the way others expected of me. Every defined muscle, every drop of sweat shed in the gym was a declaration of independence, a way of shouting to the world, I am strong, I am capable, I am worthy of being noticed. Bodybuilding became more than just a hobby. It became my identity, my way of seeking the perfection I always felt was missing. I dedicated myself body and soul to the sport, diving headfirst into strict diets, grueling training routines, and yes, even the use of supplements to enhance my performance. Little did I know that this obsessive pursuit of physical perfection would lead me on a journey that transcended the limits of my body and would make me question everything I thought I knew about life, death, and the purpose of our existence. What I'm about to share with you is the story of how I died. Yes, you heard that right. I died. But more importantly, it's the story of how that death completely changed my perspective on what it truly means to be alive. I remember that day like it was yesterday. It was an ordinary Tuesday, or at least it seemed that way. I had woken up early, as usual, for my workout routine. The sun had barely risen when I arrived at the gym, determined to push my limits once again. At that time, I was preparing for an important competition. The pressure was immense, not just from the competition itself, but also the pressure I placed on myself. Every glance in the mirror was a reminder that I needed to be better, stronger, more defined. I was obsessed with the idea of achieving physical perfection, convinced that this would finally bring me the respect and acceptance I had always sought. It was within this context that I decided to try a new supplement. A gym buddy had told me about it, promising quick and impressive results. I knew I should have been more cautious, but the promise of reaching my goals faster was too tempting to resist. That night, after an especially intense workout, I decided to take a dose of the supplement. I remember looking at the concentrated powder, hesitating for a moment. Something inside me told me it was dangerous, but I ignored that voice. After all, I had come so far in my journey, and this could be the final push I needed. I mixed the powder and water and drank it all at once. The taste was bitter, leaving a strange sensation in my mouth. At first, I didn't feel anything different. I showered, had dinner, and got ready for bed, just like any other night. It was when I was about to lie down that everything started to go wrong. Suddenly, I felt my heart racing in a way I had never experienced before. My vision began to blur, and a sense of panic took hold of me. I tried to stand up, but my legs wouldn't respond. It was as if my body was shutting down, system by system. With great effort, I managed to grab my phone and dial 911. My voice came out weak and broken as I tried to explain what was happening. The words felt heavy in my mouth, and every breath was a struggle. The last thing I remember before everything went dark was the distant sound of sirens. In that moment, I realized I had made a terrible mistake. All the hard work, all the discipline, all the pursuit of perfection, none of it mattered now that I was on the brink of death. And then, the world disappeared. What happened next is something I still have difficulty putting into words. It's like trying to explain colors to someone who's never seen or sound to someone who's never heard. But I'll do my best to share this extraordinary experience. Suddenly, without any noticeable transition, I found myself floating above my own body. It was a surreal feeling, like I was watching a scene from a movie, but the movie was about me. There I was, lying on the floor of my room, pale and motionless. Paramedics were moving quickly around me, their voices urgent, but strangely distant. The strangest thing of all was that I didn't feel fear. On the contrary, there was a sense of calm and peace that I had never experienced before. It was as if all the worries, all the insecurities I had carried throughout my life had simply disappeared. As I watched the scene below, I began to realize that I could hear the thoughts of the people around me. They weren't clear words, but impressions, emotions. I could feel the panic of the rookie paramedic, the calm determination of the more experienced one, the concern of my neighbor who had been awakened by the commotion. It was at that moment that I realized I was dead, or at least what I had always considered to be me, my physical body, was dead. But there I was, conscious, thinking, observing. How was that possible? Before I could fully process this realization, I felt a gentle pull. It was as if something was calling me, inviting me to go beyond that scene. Without hesitation, I let myself be carried by this gentle force. The environment around me began to change. The room, the paramedics, my body, all of it began to dissolve, giving way to a bright light, though not blinding. It was a welcoming light, almost alive, pulsating with its own energy. And then, in the midst of that light, a figure began to form. It was a man, or at least he appeared to be a man. But there was something different about him. His eyes were deep and wise, as if they contained all the knowledge of the universe. His presence was both imposing and comforting at the same time. He smiled at me and said, "Welcome, Everly. I am Drake, your guide on this journey." His voice was like music, resonating not only around me but within me. Instinctively, I knew I could trust him. "You have questions," he continued, not as a question but as a statement. "It's natural. Everyone does when they get here. But before we answer those questions, there are things you need to see and understand." With a gentle gesture, Drake indicated a path of light stretching out before us. "Come," he said. "There is much for you to learn about the true nature of existence." And so, side by side with this being of light, I took the first step on a journey that would forever change my understanding of life, death, and everything that exists between these two states. As we walked along the path of light, Drake began to speak. His voice was calm, but carried a wisdom that seemed to come from the very essence of the universe. "Everly," he said, "the first thing you need to understand is that life as you know it, the physical world, is just a small part of a much greater reality. It's like a school, a place where souls come to learn and grow." Those words echoed deeply within me. All my life, I had struggled so hard to prove my worth, to be good enough. And now, here was this being of light telling me that all of it was part of a larger plan, a learning process. Drake continued, "Many religions and philosophies on earth teach about judgment, heaven and hell, reward and punishment. But the truth is much simpler and, at the same time, more profound. There is no judgment here, Everly. There is no punishment. There is only growth and evolution. I felt a sense of relief hearing this. All my life, I had carried the weight of expectations, both mine and others. The idea that we are not here to be judged but to learn was liberating. But if there's no judgment, I asked, what's the purpose of all of this? Why do we go through so many hardships in earthly life? Drake smiled, a smile full of compassion and understanding. The purpose, Everly, is love. Love in its purest and most powerful form. Every experience you've had on earth, every challenge you've faced, every relationship you've formed, it was all an opportunity to learn about love and to express it in different ways. I thought about my own life, the struggles with my father, the competition with my sister, the relentless pursuit of physical perfection. It all seemed so small and insignificant now. But it wasn't just about love, Drake continued. You also came to learn about the power of your thoughts. You see, Everly, your thoughts are far more powerful than you realize. They literally shape your reality. That revelation hit me like lightning. How many times had I sabotaged myself with negative thoughts? How often had I created my own unhappiness through limiting beliefs? Thoughts are tools of creation, Drake explained. Every thought you have sends a vibration into the universe, and the universe responds to that vibration. That's why it's so important to cultivate positive thoughts, thoughts of love and compassion. As I absorbed this information, the scenery around us began to change. Glimpses of my life passed before my eyes. Moments of joy, sadness, anger, love. I realized that each of those moments had been an opportunity for learning, a chance to grow and evolve. Remember, Everly, Drake said softly, you are not your body. You are not your achievements or failures. You are an eternal soul, on a journey of discovery and growth, and that journey is infinitely beautiful and meaningful. With those words, I felt a deep sense of peace wash over me. For the first time in my life, or death, I felt truly free. We continued our journey, and the environment around us seemed to constantly change. At times, it was as if we were floating through distant galaxies. At other moments, it felt like we were in a celestial garden of indescribable beauty. But everywhere, I could feel a pulsating, living energy that Drake soon identified for me. What you're feeling, Everly, is love, he explained. Not the limited love we often experience on Earth, but love in its purest and most powerful form. It's the energy that sustains the entire universe. I closed my eyes, letting myself be completely enveloped by this sensation. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced, deeper than romantic love, more encompassing than familial love, more powerful than any earthly emotion. But if love is so powerful, I asked, why is it so hard to fully feel it on Earth? Drake smiled, his gaze full of understanding. Because on Earth, you are covered by layers and layers of conditioning, fears, and expectations. You wear masks, play roles, and try to be who you think you should be instead of who you truly are. His words hit me deeply. I thought about my entire life, how I had tried so hard to be the perfect daughter, the perfect athlete, always trying to fit into molds that others had created for me. Authenticity, Everly, is the key to unlocking the full potential of love in your life, Drake continued. When you are truly authentic, when you remove all the masks and allow your true essence to shine, you become a pure channel for universal love. I was silent for a moment, reflecting on his words. How many times had I stifled my true nature, my genuine desires and dreams, in the name of pleasing others or reaching an impossible standard of perfection? But how can I be authentic when there are so many pressures and expectations in the world? I asked. I start by recognizing that you are perfect just as you are, Drake replied. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. Your existence is already a perfect expression of divine love. Those words touched something deep within me. All my life, I had sought external validation, always striving to be good enough. And now here was this being of light telling me that I was already perfect simply by existing. When you live authentically, Drake continued, you not only free yourself, but you also inspire others to do the same. It's like a chain reaction of love and acceptance. I visualized what it would be like to live that way, without fear of judgment, without the constant need to prove my worth, simply being myself in all my imperfect perfection. Remember, Everly, Drake said softly, love is not something you need to seek outside of yourself. It's something you already are. Your journey on earth is about remembering that truth and expressing it in all of your actions. I felt a wave of emotion wash over me, a mixture of joy, relief, and a deep sense of peace. For the first time, I began to understand the true meaning of unconditional love, not just for others, Gidai, but for myself. And what about others? I asked. What about those who hurt or reject us? Drake smiled compassionately. Loving unconditionally doesn't mean allowing others to mistreat you. It means recognizing that, just like you, everyone is on their own journey of learning. When you see others through the eyes of love, you can have compassion for their struggles, even when you need to set healthy boundaries. Those words made me think of my father, how I had always sought his approval. Now I could see that his rigidity, his inability to show affection, were reflections of his own struggles and limitations. True love, Everly, is liberating, Drake concluded. It frees you from the need for control, the relentless pursuit of perfection, the fear of not being enough. When you live in love, you live in harmony with the universe. As I absorbed these profound truths, I felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time, I glimpsed a way of living that wasn't based on fear or competition, but on love and acceptance. And so, with my heart full of new understanding, I continued my journey with Drake, eager to discover what other revelations awaited me. As we continued our journey through this ethereal realm, Drake abruptly stopped. He turned to me, his eyes glowing with an intensity that made me pay full attention. Everly, he said, his voice heavy with importance, there is something crucial you need to understand about the nature of reality. Your thoughts are not mere passive reflections of the world around you. They are active tools of creation. I was intrigued by this statement. What do you mean by that? I asked. Drake made a broad gesture with his hand, and suddenly we were surrounded by a myriad of floating images, scenes from my past life, moments of joy, sadness, triumph, and defeat. Each of these experiences, he explained, began as a thought that you nurtured, believed in, and energized with your attention and emotion. I looked at the images, recognizing crucial moments in my life. I saw the first time I decided to enter a bodybuilding competition, remembering the fear and excitement I felt. I saw the moments of doubt when I thought I wasn't good enough, and how those thoughts had manifested in real-life experiences of failure. But how is that possible? I asked, still trying to fully grasp the concept. The universe, Drake explained patiently, responds to the vibrations you emit, and those vibrations are created by your thoughts and emotions. When you repeatedly think about something, when you feel it deeply, you are essentially sending a request to the universe. I thought about all the times I had sabotaged myself with negative thoughts and doubts about my abilities. Had I created my own obstacles? As if reading my mind, Drake continued, Yes, Everly. Many of the limitations you experienced in life were created by your own thought patterns. But the good news is that just as you can create limitations, you can also create infinite possibilities. He made another gesture, and the images around us changed. Now I saw alternate versions of myself, versions where I seemed happier, more fulfilled, more at peace. These, Drake explained, are possibilities that exist for you, potential futures that you can manifest through the power of your thoughts. I was amazed by these visions. It was as if a whole new world of possibilities had opened up before me. But remember, Drake warned, with great power comes great responsibility. Your thoughts are powerful, so it's crucial that you use them with wisdom and intention. I nodded, understanding the depth of this truth. How can I start using my thoughts in a more positive way? I asked. Drake smiled. Start by paying attention to your thought patterns. Observe which thoughts you tend to repeat, and what emotions they evoke. When you notice negative or limiting thoughts, don't fight them. Simply acknowledge them and gently replace them with more positive and empowering thoughts. He paused, letting those words sink in. Remember, Everly, you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes the thoughts. This gives you the power to choose which thoughts you want to nurture and which you want to let go of. As I absorbed these profound truths, I felt a shift within me. It was as if a new sense of power and responsibility was awakening. I realized that I had spent much of my life feeling like a victim of circumstances, when in fact I had the power to shape my reality all along. Use this knowledge wisely, Everly, Drake concluded. Your thoughts are seeds. Plant them with care and nurture them with love, and you will see a garden of possibilities bloom in your life. With those words, I felt ready for the next stage of my journey, eager to learn more about the power that resided within me and how I could use it to create a truly meaningful and fulfilling life. As we continued our journey, I noticed something strange. The concept of time seemed to have lost all meaning. There was no day or night, no sense of hours passing. It was as if we were suspended in an eternal now. Drake, I asked, how much time has passed since I left my body? He smiled, a smile that seemed to contain all the wisdom of the universe. Everly, time as you know it is an illusion. Here there is no past, present, or future. Everything exists simultaneously. I tried to process this information. It was a concept so different from everything I had known on Earth. But how is that possible? I questioned. Drake made a broad gesture with his hand, and suddenly we were surrounded by a sort of cosmic web with countless interconnected points of light. Imagine that each of these points of light is a moment, he explained. On Earth, you experience these moments linearly, one after the other. But in reality, all of these moments exist simultaneously. Your soul, Everly, is eternal. It exists outside of time. I gazed in wonder at the web of lights. It was as if I could see my entire life, past, present, and future, happening all at once. But if everything already exists, I asked, does that mean we don't have free will? That everything is predetermined? Drake shook his head. No, Everly, free will is real. Think of it like a book. All the pages of the book exist simultaneously, but you choose which page to read at any given moment. In the same way, your soul chooses which experiences it wants to live. This revelation hit me hard. All my life, I had felt trapped by circumstances, by past mistakes, by fear of the future. But now I understood that, on a deeper level, I had always had the freedom to choose. Your soul, Drake continued, chose to live this specific life for a reason. Every challenge, every joy, every relationship was an opportunity for growth and learning. I thought about all the struggles I had faced, the difficult relationship with my father, the obsessive pursuit of physical perfection, even the overdose that brought me to this place. Had all of that been part of my learning path? Yes, Drake responded, once again seeming to read my thoughts. But remember, Everly, there are no mistakes in the universe. Every experience, no matter how painful it may seem at the time, serves the greater purpose of your soul's evolution. I felt a wave of emotion wash over me, a mix of relief, gratitude, and a deep sense of peace. For the first time, I could see my life not as a series of mistakes and successes, but as a sacred journey of self-discovery. And what about the future? I asked. If everything exists simultaneously, does that mean we can see what will happen? Drake smiled gently. The future, as you understand it, is a field of infinite possibilities. Every choice you make shapes that field. You can glimpse potential futures, but the final choice will always be yours. This idea was both exciting and a bit daunting. I realized the immense power and responsibility that came with this freedom of choice. Remember, Everly Montgomery, Drake concluded, your soul is eternal. This life is just one chapter in a much larger story. When you see things from this perspective, the challenges of earthly life take on new meaning. As I absorbed these profound truths, it felt as though a veil had been lifted. For the first time, I glimpsed the magnitude of my own existence, not just as Everly Montgomery, the bodybuilder from Dallas, but as an eternal soul on an infinite journey of discovery and growth. I couldn't say how much time had passed, if time even existed in that place, but eventually, I felt a subtle shift in the energy around me. Drake, who had been my constant guide throughout this journey, looked at me with an expression that mixed tenderness and a certain sadness. Everly, he said softly, the time has come for you to make a choice. I felt a tightness in my chest. Somehow, I knew what was coming. What choice? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Drake made a gesture, and suddenly I saw two scenes before me. On one side was the continuation of this spiritual journey, a path of light stretching infinitely. On the other, I saw my earthly body, still fighting for life, in a hospital bed. You can choose to continue your journey here, Drake explained, or you can return to your earthly life. Both paths hold value. Both offer opportunities for growth and learning. I remained silent for a long moment, contemplating my options. Part of me longed to stay, to continue exploring the wonders and truths I had discovered here, but another part. If I return, I asked hesitantly, will I remember all of this? Drake smiled gently. Not in the way you remember now. The specific memories of this experience will be veiled, but the essence of what you have learned will stay with you, guiding your choices and your perception of life. I looked again at the hospital scene. I saw my parents there, worried, waiting. I saw friends, gym colleagues, all hoping for my recovery, and suddenly, I knew what I had to do. I want to go back, I said firmly. There is so much I still need to do, so much love to give and receive. Drake nodded, his face radiant with approval. A brave choice, Everly. Remember, every moment of your life is an opportunity to express the love that you are, to create with the power of your thoughts, to live authentically. I felt a wave of emotion wash over me, gratitude, love, and renewed determination. Before you go, Drake said, there is one last thing you need to understand. The journey back will not be easy. Your body has been through significant trauma, and recovery will be a challenge. But remember, Everly, you are stronger than you think. You carry within you all the love and wisdom of the universe. I nodded, feeling the weight and importance of this decision. I'm ready, I said, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions I felt. Drake smiled one last time and reached out to touch my forehead. The moment his fingers touched me, I felt an explosion of light and love so intense that I thought I might disintegrate. And then, darkness. The first thing I noticed was sound, a rhythmic, constant beep that seemed to echo in my head. Then came the pain, a dull discomfort that seemed to permeate every cell of my body. Slowly, with an effort that felt Herculean, I opened my eyes. The light was blinding, and it took a few moments for my vision to adjust. When I could finally focus, I saw that I was in a hospital room. Tubes and wires were connected to my body, and the beeping sound was from a machine monitoring my vital signs. I tried to move, but my body felt heavy, as if it were made of lead. That's when I noticed a presence beside me. Turning my head with difficulty, I saw my mother, asleep in a chair next to the bed. "Mom," I tried to say, but my voice came out as a hoarse whisper, barely audible. Even so, it was enough to wake her. Her eyes flew open, and when she saw me awake, Her face lit up with a mixture of joy and relief. "Everly," she exclaimed, tears welling up in her eyes. "Oh my God, you're awake." She quickly stood up, pressing the button to call the nurse while holding my hand with the other. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Doctors and nurses entered the room, asking questions, checking monitors, adjusting equipment. I felt confused, disoriented, as if I had woken from a long and vivid dream. When things finally calmed down a bit, the doctor approached my bed. "Miss Montgomery," he said, his voice gentle but serious, "you gave us quite a scare. You've been in a coma for 2 weeks." 2 weeks. The words echoed in my mind. It seemed impossible. The journey I had experienced or dreamed felt like it had lasted an eternity and only a moment at the same time. What happened?" I managed to ask, my voice still weak. The doctor explained about the overdose, how my heart had stopped for several minutes before they were able to revive me. He spoke about the damage my body had suffered, about the long recovery ahead of me. As he spoke, fragments of my experience began to come back, not as clear memories, but as impressions, sensations. I remembered a bright light, a deep sense of peace, important lessons I had learned, though I could no longer articulate them. I looked at my mother, still holding my hand, silent tears streaming down her face. I saw the love in her eyes, the fear she must have felt, the joy of seeing me awake. And suddenly, I was overwhelmed by a wave of emotion so intense that it made me gasp. "I love you, Mom," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "I'm so sorry for everything." She squeezed my hand, now openly sobbing. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, "and we love you so much. We're so happy you're back." In that moment, lying in that hospital bed, weak and in pain but alive, I knew that something fundamental had changed inside me. I couldn't explain exactly what it was or how it had happened, but I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. And so, with tears in my eyes and my heart full of a love I was only beginning to understand, I took the first step on my journey back to life. The months that followed my awakening were an emotional and physical roller coaster. The physical recovery was brutal. My body, once so strong and well-trained, now struggled to perform the simplest tasks. Every step was a battle, every movement an exercise in willpower. But the true struggle, I discovered, was internal. Although the specific memories of my near-death experience had faded like a dream upon waking, something fundamental had changed within me. It was as if I had awakened not just from a coma, but from a much deeper sleep, the sleep of spiritual unconsciousness. I began to see the world with new eyes. The things that had once seemed so important, the pursuit of physical perfection, the constant need for approval, the fear of failure, now seemed insignificant. In their place was a deep sense of purpose, an intuitive understanding that there was something more, something greater. My relationship with my family also changed dramatically. For the first time, I was able to see my father not as the tyrant I had always thought he was, but as a complex human being with his own struggles and limitations. We had deep, honest conversations, facing years of resentment and misunderstanding. It wasn't easy, but each step brought us closer. My sister, Melissa, who had always seemed so distant and perfect, turned out to be an unexpected ally. She was by my side throughout rehabilitation, encouraging me when I wanted to give up, celebrating every small victory. We discovered a connection we never knew existed. As for bodybuilding, my old passion, I realized that I needed to reevaluate my relationship with it. I didn't give it up completely. The love for exercise and discipline was still a part of who I was. But now, it was only a part of a much richer and more balanced life. I began using my experience to help other athletes find a healthy balance, both physically and mentally. Most importantly, I began to explore my spirituality in a way I never had before. I didn't turn to any specific religion, but instead embarked on a personal search for meaning and connection. Meditation, yoga, readings on philosophy and spirituality, all of this became part of my daily routine. And the thoughts, oh, the thoughts. I vaguely remembered having learned something important about the power of thoughts during my experience. Though I couldn't recall the details, I began paying much more attention to my thought patterns. I realized how my thoughts shaped my reality. It was as if a gentle voice inside me, a voice that sounded strangely familiar, would remind me of who I really was and what I had learned. Gradually, I started sharing my story. In the beginning, it was hard. I was afraid people would think I was crazy or wouldn't believe me. I can honestly say I'm grateful for everything that happened. The overdose almost took my life, but paradoxically, it's what taught me how to truly live. I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes. I still have bad days. But now I know that every challenge is an opportunity for growth. Every interaction is a chance to express love. My near-death experience showed me that we are so much more than our physical bodies, so much more than our earthly achievements or failures. We are eternal beings, on a journey of discovery and growth. And each of us has the power to shape our reality through the power of love in our thoughts. If there's one message I'd like to share with the world, it's this. Don't wait for a near-death experience to start truly living. Love, connection, purpose. They're all available to us here and now. We just need the courage to open our hearts and live authentically. My name is Everly Montgomery, and this is my story. But in a way, it's the story of all of us. A story of death and rebirth, of challenge and triumph, of fear and, above all, love. May we all remember who we truly are and live according to that truth. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can watch every new video and help us spread this message to more people. See you next time.